are going to move on to our last topic of the afternoon for
Thank you.
our legislative session. Thank you, Ms. Levy, for joining us. That is Council Resolution number 89-2019. We already did 2020 at the beginning. And I know there are a number of questions about this. I literally, hot off the presses, was just handed an updated fiscal impact that says, the legislation states the county will be conveying the property for $50,000 based on the appraised value. However, according to the administration, their intent is to reduce this to $20,000 based on a March 23rd appraisal. And according to the Department of Public Works, there's an annual savings of $2,300 in maintenance. I know, Ms. Walsh, that you have asked a number of people to join us today. So if you would like to start off with the people that you have asked to participate, we can get this phase started.
Sure. All right. Thanks, Chair Young. We asked a number of the community members who've been tracking this project since its inception. It certainly predates this council. I think it goes back to as early as 2016. They were the ones that have been going to a succession of design advisory panel boards and other pre-submission committee meetings, all of the trappings of a DPZ approval process that may have now been undertaken at least 3 times. And that's Dick Bolton, who's also with Columbia Association, I believe, Buffy Allen, and Lori Liskin. We also asked for the appraiser from Lippman Frizzell, who performed this DPW procured appraisal, to get some sense of what his instructions were and how his recommendation was arrived at. And then we also asked Mr. Halpin, who is an attorney also in Howard County, who I think just independently reached out to our office. I understand he may have reached out to other council offices to talk about this same issue, but in other regards, and that is disposition of county property to, I think in large part, adjacent landowners, and what his suggestions were for that. In this particular case, and I think I've made it known, I think both of these, or however many appraisals we have now, grossly underestimate the value of that property, particularly as assembled. And in a situation where we're dealing with finite resources, we struggle daily with the concept of a budget that's not going to make everyone happy. Why we would be letting an acre of property go when there are so many alternative public uses for it in this particular location seems strange. But that is who we asked. I see on our agenda that Tom Cole is also, I think, on the phone, and my understanding is he is still counsel representing the developer and proponent of this sale at, I think, now $20,000.
So would you like to start with the people who live in the area? Dick Bolton, Buffy Elam, and Lori Liskin?
I could, or I mean, actually, we only have, are we really, this is a hard stop at 4. I know we have another meeting at 4:30. I'd actually like to hear
Is it a hard stop at 4? I mean, we can go an extra 15 minutes. It's up to, yeah, we can go up to.
It would be helpful to have the half hour in between to just
we have like
a bunch of stuff
kids,
and then come
children,
back
food, stuffs.
Okay. All right. So.
I mean, we agreed to this, putting it all in one day so that it's easiest for all of the logistics. But
all right.
Yes, I agree with Miss Rigby. Like, my children are planning to front yard setting fire stuff. But no, actually, oh, that's totally not true. Hopefully Bill Aniszewski's not watching this. I'd like to hear from the appraiser, because I have some questions with just the general approach that was taken to this second or third valuation of the property, why these constraints were put on it, and how the outcome would be different were he to have applied any one of a number of alternative methodologies to that analysis.
Okay, so that would be Michael, Ciccarelli, Lippman, and Frizzell, and I'm not sure who that is. is representing that appraisal firm? That's the question.
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And what is your name?
Okay, great. This is Michael Ciccarelli.
Oh,
As you
okay.
just mentioned, I'm with Lippman, Frizzell, and Mitchell.
Oh, okay. It was a little confusing. It looked like that was the whole name of the firm. So your name is Michael Ciccarelli, and you are with Lippman Frizzell. All right. Got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Mr.
So just-
Ciccarelli, would you like to talk about your appraisal?
Sure, certainly. As I just mentioned, my name is Michael Ciccarelli. I'm a certified general commercial real estate appraiser with Lippman, Frizzell, and Mitchell. Just to give you a little background, I haven't spoken with most of you before, so our firm has been providing appraisal services for the Baltimore, D.C. area for over 40 years. I've been with the firm starting in 2005. We have an office on Dobbin Road in Columbia, so we're very familiar with the area. And I've personally done a lot of work with municipalities and private property owners regarding condemnation and right-of-way and cases similar to this. I was involved in the appraisals for properties being taken and damaged by the flooding in Ellicott City. And for those properties, I represented, on some cases, Howard County and others, the private property owners. So as an appraiser, we maintain sort of a third-party view of everything and try to stay out of having any involvement in the sales or acquisitions themselves. I myself am a Howard County resident with 4 kids in the school district, so you can imagine what my schedule has been like.
Yes. So, Ms. Walsh, questions?
So this is the first paragraph of the appraisal directed to Ms. Bishop at DPW. And it states there that the purpose of the appraisal is to estimate the market value of the 1.09 acres and the value of the proposed perpetual easement with no development rights for the instructions of the client. The client in this case is Howard County's Department of Public Works, right?
That's correct, yes. Those extraordinary assumptions that you see in the limitations on the property and how I valued the property, those were the instructions by the DPW.
Okay, so you didn't do any analysis as to the basis of those extraordinary limitations imposed by DPW?
I did not, no.
Okay. Elsewhere in your analysis, you talk about different methodologies used to prepare appraisals, and I'm gonna have to do a word search here. But one of them was the concept of assembly or assemblage, right?
Yes, ma'am, yes.
Can you please explain for us what that methodology would look like?
Sure. For assemblage values and stuff we've done for State Highway before, we look at the value of a property both with and without the adjacent parcel. So we value a site, and then we value that same property as if it had acquired the adjacent site to determine sort of what incremental value or what assemblage value acquiring that additional parcel would have. So that's referred to as an assemblage value.
Okay, but if I understand the purpose statement at the beginning of this report, that is not what Lippman Frizzell did in this particular exercise.
That is correct.
And I've found it now since council colleagues. This is on page 30 of the report, 35 of 80 pages if you're going by that. And it talks about in determining the highest and best use of the property as if vacant. We focus on the existing use, a projected development, a subdivision, an assemblage, or holding the land as an investment. None of those 5 highest or best uses as if vacant were employed as part of this appraisal. Were they, Mr. Ciccarelli?
They were considered in the context of the restrictions that DPW was being placed on the property as far as prohibiting development and not allowing any of those development rights to be transferred.
Okay. Did you do any analysis as to who holds deed, fee simple interest of this property?
Of the roadbed itself, I believe it's Howard County. I didn't do a title search myself because there's no tax record for that piece of property.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking, is what evidence you've seen demonstrating that Howard County holds a fee simple interest in this 1.09 acres of land?
All I have is the instructions from DPW stating that Howard County owned the property, but I don't have any deed history on it because it doesn't exist in the land records.
Okay. All right. Believe it or not, Chair Young, that's really all I have for Mr. Ciccarelli.
Okay.
I would, maybe others would be interested as well in why those limitations were placed on this exercise from DPW. We certainly know that it is intended to be developed. It is going to be part of his assembly, that its highest best use is probably not an abandoned roadway next to 108. But what I'd also be interested in hearing from DPW, as I asked before, is what analysis was done in terms of other publicly beneficial uses of the same stretch of land. And we've put forward relieving traffic congestion on 108 or Columbia Road. We've talked about linking to complete streets that have been promised on Columbia Road since well before I was a campaigner on the trail. I've been to lots of DPW meetings about that. There is an active flood zone marked with signs immediately downstream from this property. Stormwater management, green space, always something that this District 1 office and hopefully others is interested in. Or even just a bus stop, a safe haven for the bicyclists, the pedestrians, anyone using that intersection. We have yet to see an alternative to this sale, right? Because the whole purpose of this legislation is to say, excuse us from the ordinary processes that would put this out for public bid and get, a fair market value for it as determined by some auction process. But this is going in the wrong direction as far as I'm concerned, in that we seem to have devalued the property even more since the initial alarm at what we'd like to sell this to one singular for-profit developer for. Again, in the absence of any alternative, as though I don't even think there's been one considered, but if there was, why this proposed route is the best of those hopefully considered alternatives. And so I'm not, I don't want to take away from the community members who, again, have been so involved from the beginning on this. And I don't want to take away from other council members. I think it's pretty clear where District 1 stands on this. This is in my district. We've tracked this very closely in all of its many iterations. I don't rule out that there will be others going forward, but
Would you like to hear from Melanie Bishop?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Ms. Bishop?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
I have not conducted any analysis for different types for this piece of property.
Mr. Youngman?
I wasn't responding to Ms. Bishop, though. I was just sort of getting in line.
Oh,
So
okay.
I don't want to interrupt.
Okay.
What she was doing.
Oh, well, I guess I do have a follow-up question to that. You haven't conducted any analysis of the $20,000 appraisal? Is that what you mean? You haven't done that? Or you haven't conducted any analysis of the property in general?
I did not do anything as far as an analysis for alternative items at this location. I think that's what I heard the question was, but no, I have not done anything.
Well, I mean, one of the things that we've heard from the property owners and or the people who live in the vicinity, and I'd like them to talk about it, is the issue of the cars on 108 backing up, or I'm sorry, the cars on 108 backing up, coming into that whole Dorsey Hall community and in the evening because the traffic is so bad now, and using that road as actually cutting it back through and allowing it to be used as another ingress into the whole community so that they're not all backed up in a sort of very unsafe manner on Route 108. So you haven't heard about that? You haven't heard anybody suggesting that?
Can I interject here a little bit? This is Jim
Director Irvin, you are still here. Yes.
I'm still here, still alive and kicking. So
Okay.
the issue, why this came the way it did, we did appraise the property for the full development potential. And and we also looked at it strictly as an access easement to the property. The developer has stated very clearly that they're not interested in acquiring any additional density. They don't need any more density to make their project work. All they want is a driveway access to the site. The other uses of the property are still out there for future options. And the question again is on the talk about Old Columbia Road is really the Old Annapolis Road intersection needs to be upgraded. That's what's causing that backup of getting the weave over there. So it's not just adding a turn lane onto Old Columbia is going to solve the problem. It's a much more elaborate and complex project. So that in itself won't solve the problem. This would leave that open for future decisions. It's strictly a question of, do you want to sell the property to the developer? All they're asking for is a driveway access. They don't want the density associated with this property. So we're not giving up the property.
So
per
Director
se,
Irvin, if we sell it, that means, I mean, how could we ever say, well, now we want this and now we want that? Why?
We're granting an easement. We're not selling the whole property. That's, I guess, the difference.
Oh, so this is, we're going to sell them an easement. We're not actually going to sell this property in fee simple to them.
They don't need the property.
Okay.
And then
Councilmember
in
Walsh.
10 years, when we decide we need the extra capacity on the 108, we take back the entrance to whatever it is, end up being built there. Like that is not a legitimate explanation of what's at issue here.
Well,
we will convey the property rights to use of that land. And I'm not sure however it could be revocable back to the county if in whatever term we decide that we need it. I'd love to see the terms where that is outlined, but that is not what any one of the number of plans that this developer has put forward for this site indicates. They are using it for parking spaces. They're using it, as you say, for access to that property. They are not putting trees on it or even just leaving it exactly as it is, although it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of street appeal being entertained. But it in no way will be in a position. I can't even imagine the situation where 5 years from now, your successor will say to the current site owner of that property, give it back. We need to do better on Route 108 or Columbia Road, or now we're going to finally do complete streets there. That I can't. No.
Ms. Liskin, I know you're out there, and I'd just like to hear from you about how you view that little piece of property on 108.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. This has been a very interesting discussion. It sounds almost like a repeat of
Yes,
September 2019 when I testified. Let me just mention that I live in Dorsey Hall and that I have lived here since 1988. My children have gone to school here. I am here sort of representing the concerns of my neighbors. When this property was first discussed, it was for 55 plus, and now I understand it's going to be family units and possibly affordable housing, which is great. I'm all in favor of affordable housing, but the issues are still the same. The problems are still the same, and traffic is a huge one. We hear from our neighbors that it can take 10 minutes or more to get from the exit of 29, the exit ramp of 29 and 108 to the traffic light at Old Annapolis. And regardless of where the bottleneck is, I think we should come up with a plan to address it before we convey the property and before we start building and before we add another potentially as many 200 cars a day to the problem and to the environment. I'm also very concerned about the fact that we're now dealing with children if we have family houses, and there's a whole issue of safety. These kids are going to be walking down to the playground at the Dorsey Hall neighborhood. They're going to be crossing Columbia Road to go to the tot lots and the neighborhoods on the other side of Columbia Road. And it feels like an accident waiting to happen. And I will repeat again what I said last September, that the county's 2018 traffic study showed that there were 8,000 cars a day passing the Dorsey Hall pool on Columbia Road. And again, that doesn't deal with the traffic volume of Old Annapolis Road and Columbia Road and all of the people going up Old Annapolis Road to the Centennial neighborhoods. So my argument here is we have some real issues with traffic, and it seems critical that we deal with those. We come up with a plan for them before we can convey the property to the builders. Now, we have suggested a number of issues, adding a right turn lane, reconfiguring traffic patterns, traffic lights. I'm not a civil engineer, but my point is we need a plan before we move forward. Another issue that has been very, very troublesome is that the builders' lack of responsiveness to the needs of the community. They have submitted repeatedly designs to the Howard County Design Advisory Panel, and those designs have been rejected. The council has said, and I'm going to quote here, the builders have not addressed community concerns about building design, which the panel regards as incompatible with the neighborhood. They also were concerned that the builders, when they came back for the second of two meetings in 2019, had not responded to the advisory panel's questions and concerns. They didn't present information that the design advisory panel had asked for. So when I hear the builders say that they're going to look at having certain activities for children in the clubhouse, and they're going to look for playground areas in the building site, that's not good enough. I want to see a plan before we move forward. So essentially, I'm saying we want a plan. And if we are going to go forward with affordable housing, all well and good, but the very legitimate need for affordable housing doesn't mean that we have to ignore all of these other issues. We're going to be living with this property for decades and decades. So we want to have something that really benefits the infrastructure in our neighborhood and benefits everybody who lives here.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Liskin. And before, I know we just have a few more minutes, but Dick Bolton is also on the line, and he's the representative to the Columbia Association, as well as I know lives in the neighborhood. So, Mr. Bolton, if you would just like to add your 2 cents, if there's something that's RB.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. The opposition we have to selling this road right now is we haven't seen an acceptable plan for the property. The community has, for years, tried to get a plan that will work on this property, and we feel we're putting the cart before the horse by selling this property without that plan. And the developer has been back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and just has not been responsive to the community concerns. One of them is traffic. And it's not just that corner on 108 and Columbia Road. There is an intersection that this project will feed into, which is where the tie-up is. And that's on the corner of Old Annapolis and Columbia Road. So if you put in 100 units or so, the rush hour traffic is just going to back up again onto 108 as it is now. They've tried adjusting things according to the traffic signal there, but we haven't seen any results on that. We haven't seen a traffic study. And it just seems like we are rushing this. Now they're going back to family residences. We go back to the original problem, which was with Apfo, school capacity. And the age-restricted housing solved that problem, but now Apfo's run out and they're talking about family homes now. So now we've got the kids to worry about. And the other thing is just a big design problem. This is the gateway to the Dorsey community. This is the way most people enter into the Dorsey community. And the designs that they've presented have really just been totally incompatible with the neighborhood. We've urged them to go and get a real architect instead of just having engineers put up something for the lowest cost possible. And that would be helpful. But we just haven't seen any responsiveness from the developer. And until we do, let's hold off on the road sale.
Okay, thank you. Now, I know Mr. Halpin is also on the line, and He has such an interesting perspective. I'd like him to sort of have the last word here. Kirk Halpin, you had,
I'll wait my turn, but I'd like to
oh,
say
he got
something as
off.
well.
It's supposed to be a work session for us, not more public testimony from these people that we've already heard from like 5 times.
Well, we're trying to figure out what the problems are with this road and why we need to why we need to address it. So, but but I think Mr. Halpin is already gone. You said he's already left. He was on, but he has now left. Okay, all right. So, yeah, we were looking at a way to reappraise. I guess he had some ideas about selling that piece of land, which would have been useful for us to hear. But he's gone. So, Ms. Walsh, is there anything else you wanted to bring out before we leave today?
Not for me.
Oh, okay. Dr. Jones?
Yeah, I was just going to say that it sounded like from most everyone that spoke that there were some issues. And I'm looking at the agenda that we all received from the administrator, and I believe everyone got to speak except for Tom Cole, who I believe is representing a mindset that people were asking questions about. So I know it's 4 o'clock and we said we stop at 4, but questions that wanted to be answered, maybe Tom Cole can answer in 60 seconds or so. Instead of just leaving and saying, yeah, these are unanswered questions.
I'll be very brief. I appreciate the opportunity. My client is here at the request of Howard County Department of Public Works. Due to the acquisition of these 5 parcels, the road that was once a public road is now essentially a private road. And so Howard County DPW said, we do not want to pave and plow a road that is only serving one development. And really all we're seeking, and I understand, I have not seen DPW's revised proposal, but an easement would certainly be acceptable because all we're looking to do is continue to use the property for what it's been used for decades. As for the traffic improvements that are proposed, I would suggest that that would actually make that intersection more dangerous because, as Director Irvin had stated, most of the traffic is going west on Old Annapolis Road. So by putting an additional turn lane there, you're going to have people driving across that entire road. But again, at the end of the day, we're just trying to continue to have access to the property. And it seems that many of the objections and proposed alternatives for this property only came up once development was proposed. And in this case, it would satisfy a continuing need for affordable housing in Howard County, particularly in this area.
Thank you. Anybody else? No?
I just want to say it's great to hear that affordable housing is a consideration as other council members have advocated for that in the past. So hopefully this will continue at the very least for a consideration of it.
Anything else?
I'll add one thing, Chair Young, please.
Okay.
This project, depending on, I don't know what it depends on, but sometimes is affordable housing. Sometimes, I mean, you heard the testimony from the others. I really do believe we're on the 3rd round and no one can actually show me what the current plan is right now. Today, it's affordable housing. As Ms. Liskin said, that's great. But these estimates of this appraisal came about when it wasn't. And I remain astounded at the valuation or the methodology behind this valuation. We put something out on social media that shows that the assemblage of the balance of parcels comprising this total development site, each were acquired on the order of over $1 million an acre. And for the county to sell the last acre of that assemblage for apparently now $20,000 does not sound like good government to me, aside from all of the other potential uses that apparently have yet to be explored by DPW.
Okay. Well, thank you. On that note, goodbye for the next 30 minutes.